Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for our last live stream before patch 3.22 lands. This is going to be a quick discussion of all of the Ancestor League challenges. Now, these have been released, and in the very last few hours, there has also been all of the details of the actual Ancestor challenges, the Ancestor Challenge rewards as well. So you can have a look at those if you want, and I'll put a link to both of these things into the comments here. So firstly, this is the list of all of the challenges. Secondly, this is the list of the various rewards that are available. And now we will be jumping on to discussing the challenges themselves. So there are 40 of them in the normal game. There are also 8 more in Ruthless, but I don't know what those are as yet. I don't believe, they may have been datamined, but they're not available. Something to note that with the challenge rewards, they feel very similar to each other, the different tiers. Tier 1, 2, 3, and 4 all feel pretty similar. I think that Tier 1 is going to be a cool reward for people who don't have many armor sets yet, but Tiers 2, 3, and 4, not what I'm looking for, but some people will like them. Like I said, I think it's aimed at the Diablo 4 crowd more than anything else. Now, one thing that's important to note, anything here is subject to change. This is datamined info, and also there's 1 or 2 things where we don't have the full text and we can't really predict exactly what it is. There's a fair bit of information, but there's not everything is fully fleshed out. So let's start with beginner's basics. This is a straightforward training one. You'll need to equip a magic utility flask. So this is basically saying when you get your Hail Rake utility flask, your Quicksilver flask, you should be transmuting it. That's just a reminder. That's the game telling you that you need to do that. Have equipment in every slot is pretty straightforward as long as this doesn't include the heist trinket. If this does include the heist trinket, then this is going to be messy and it's going to take a bit longer, but given that it's beginner's basics, I assume it doesn't. Identify a rare item, something you'll do in Act 1 through natural gameplay, even in Ruthless, and defeat an Act boss is something you will do in Act 1. Next we have cultivated cultural customs. There's a whole bunch of these that are really difficult alliterative things to say. The GGG have started doing that just to be really annoying for people like myself that try and pronounce all of these names. But win a match in Trial of the Ancestors, spend favor to recruit a Karui warrior, banish enemy ancestral totems ×5, and 1 chieftain 1. I assume what this means is that you need to defeat the leader of the other team at least once. You need to also win a match, obviously, and you'll probably get 5 ancestral totems on the way to winning a match. From what we know about this system, you need to destroy, I think, all of the totems on the other end, or maybe you've just got to destroy one major one, but you can ban a particular opponent from continuing to participate, and that's going to be the things that's going to be the thing that is going to be the core loop of this new league. So basically, this is going to be something that you can probably do in Act 1 if you want, but I think most people are going to put it off a little while. This is the sort of thing you might do, when you're in maps and you're wanting to learn all the details of the Ancestor content. The other thing is that with the actual league content itself, it tends to be something that if you're a newer player, you'll usually be well off if you actually run these during the acts. If you're running them during the acts, you'll find that they'll give you a big boost in character power. And then there'll be stuff you can do later. Just on the question about the Righteous Fire Chieftain, yeah, I have a path of building I'm working on, but it's not finished yet. Peddler's Produce 1 is looking like it's a vendor recipe requirement. Now, magic weapon with increased spell or physical damage is the Blacksmith's Whetstone recipe, the Rustic Sash one. I can never remember exactly what it is. I think it's a rare Rustic Sash, a Blacksmith's Whetstone, and a weapon. Vendor all 3 of these together, you'll receive back a weapon with increased physical damage on it, and the rarity of the Rustic Sash that you use impacts the power of the output result. Hybrid Flask, from memory, is a life flask and a mana flask of the same tier plus a fusing orb. May or may not require the fusing orb, I'd have to look that one up or just try it. Onyx Amulet is any amulet plus a red gem, a green gem, and a blue gem. Doesn't matter whether they're skill gems or support gems. And Orb of Alchemy is kind of tricky. There's a bunch of different recipes for them. One that comes to mind is 3 items with the same name, but if I research that, I'll find there's more of them. There'll be a whole bunch of them. Act Adversaries 1 is just straightforward. These are milestone encounters you have to do as you're progressing through the campaign. Deadly Deeds is next, and this one requires you to open a strongbox. These will appear from Act 1. Complete an Abyss cannot be done until you're in Act 6. And then they'll be found in about 4 to 8% of zones, I think, in the acts. Opening a smuggler's cache is also Act 6 and onwards, and completing an expedition is also Act 6 and onwards. With expedition, there seems to be a bias towards you getting 4 of them. Like, you seem to get 4 of them earlier than RNG would indicate. And after you've had the 4 of them, then they become rarer again until you start deciding, you know, maybe you end up speccing your Atlas to have a whole bunch of expedition support on it. Maybe you don't end up doing that. But that's some of the things that are available there in Deadly Deeds. This is straightforward. This is something you will do by accident on your pathway to Act 10, unless you are actively avoiding various content. Tofar's Tribal Trials. I hope I'm getting the name right. Like, I was always calling this Tawoa because I have no idea how to speak the tongues of Maori people. But apparently it's Tofar. And you spend 10,000 favour, which presumably isn't hard. Some of the video that we've seen, some of the screenshots we've seen have items that are like low-end consumables costing several hundred favour. So I assume that this is probably as simple as like competing in a few of the tournaments. Something that if you're doing the Ancestors content a little bit on the leveling process, you'll get most of them. Now, winning a match with 8 Karui warriors on your team sounds like you've got to go a little bit out of your way for it. Likewise, activating a field item. These are things we're going to have to really assess once we get there. But judging by its position in the list of these, it's probably pretty easy to do. So I think this one's fine. So it's Tafoa. Tafoa. Thank you, Not a Goose, for confirming that. I'm undoubtedly going to get that wrong again. So Tafoa. It's, yeah. Just as I say, feel free to laugh at me every time I get that wrong, because it will continue to be wrong. Act Adversaries 2 is more milestone bosses. You can see here by the positioning that they've put in the list, this sort of indicates how hard they think these challenges are to do. They, broadly speaking, increase in difficulty with a few exceptions. And I think their goal with Act Adversaries 2 is mostly to give people a little bit of a notification, hey, you're getting closer to the end of the acts, but also to be something that new players get on their own that then makes them explore the challenge system. And then the challenge system contains a number of things that are tutorials, both about things they should be doing, beginner's basics, and also side content that they might be interested in learning about, like Deadly Deeds. I think that's their whole goal with these, and they're all pretty straightforward. Quality Quandaries is, I think all of these are, so Through Sacred Ground is the one that's the Golden Hand. A Dirty Job, I feel like that's the one in Act 1 where you've got to clean out the fetid pool. Fallen from Grace, I'm not sure. Fastus Fortuna, I think these are all quests that have rubbish rewards. So players, broadly speaking, don't do it. Tafoa, okay. I'll try and get it right, Waffle, but like I said, I'm likely to get it wrong. Tafoa. Tafoa. Okay. Thank you. And on the League Starter, I'm going to be League starting Chieftain Righteous Fire. I'm just finishing it off. Is my plans. I'll quickly pop up the plan that I've got, but this is very much still a work in progress. This is the tree I'm looking at the moment, and we're going to be playing around a bit with the totem stuff, which is probably just being a bit silly. But that's the plan I've got at the moment. It's not currently in a release-worthy state, but having said that it's not in a release-worthy state, I feel okay to link it in chat now. So that as long as you're aware that this is not that's not in a release-worthy state, you can feel free to have a look at it. But it may change. There's a bunch of things that need to change. I've got to get cursors into it. I'm going to do a whole bunch of other things, and so there's more to go. Anyways, we have an Essence challenge. Now, one of the things that happens is that all of the Kirak mods generally get a challenge associated with them. Now here, we've got to defeat 60 Essence monsters. Gaining Deafening Essences from Essence monsters times 75 means you will be required to spec the Essence mechanic for a little while, or alternately, you will be required to do the Kirak. Is it Kirak? There's the memory that has all of the essences in it. Hey, thank you for joining as a member, Sol. So I think that's something that's a pretty substantial amount of time. Additionally, defeat an essence monster in a level 83 plus area with 8 essences on it. That is not going to be a trivial fight, nor is it going to be trivial to set up. You don't need to have this be high quantity, and as a result, you can do this in a map that is a scoured map that's the last map in that essence memory. The essence memory is really good there. So that's something that you can use as a shortcut to do this. I think that the essence memory is going to be really good. Some of you are undoubtedly thinking, I'm going to be speccing essence all league. If you're in that situation, a static essences is going to happen as soon as you hit tier 16 maps and stay there for a bit. But if you're not doing that, and I am completely burnt out on essences, I have no interest in playing with essences this league at all, then the Kirak one is going to be the way to go with that. And additionally, yeah, things like using Remnants of Corruption, as has come up in chat, like they are required to get essences to drop Deafening. And on average, when you apply a Remnant of Corruption, you're not going to get 2.5 Deafening essences, even if you apply them to something that's got a Shrieking and a Screaming essence on it currently. So if you do hit that 1 in 3 upgrade, then you'll get a Deafening and a Shrieking, and it will split. Even when you factor that in, it's still going to be the case that you're going to need to do a lot of these. Lastly, this is going to be, everything except the last part of this is going to be easier in low tier maps. So do keep that in mind, but this doesn't mess around. This is not an easy challenge. This one is pretty messy. Divine Domination is next. This is a shrine one. Oh, hang on. No, this is not a shrine one. This is, I saw the word domination and assumed it was that it was going to be shrines. Defeat an essence monster with 6 or more essences. This is pretty much free. It's also part of this, but it's something that you will need to do. This is basically an introduction to all of the different mechanics. I expect there's going to be a mistake on Defeat a Breachlord. This should count both Breachlords fought in their domain and Breachlords that have been driven off by reducing their health to 0 in a map. I think on release, this is probably only going to work for one of them, but it'll be something that's easy to come along and do again later if it is broken. Defeat a Harbinger boss. Harbinger bosses are the most durable of the Harbingers, the ones that spawn the most monsters. You will never encounter a Harbinger boss in a map. You can encounter them in the beachhead, but you'll never encounter them in a map unless you spec Harbinger, and then they'll be about 25% of your Harbingers. You'll get this one pretty easily if you spec the Atlas node. What's it called? Overloaded circuits. If you allocate overloaded circuits, you will then be able to pretty quickly guarantee yourself a Harbinger boss with that. Not guarantee, but you'll get it quickly. It might take just a small number of them. Defeat a Legion General is much easier in the domain of Timeless Conflict than it is in a map, but it can be done in a map. And you've got to break them out of stasis first. When there is a Legion Monolith, there will be special glowing effects that will point towards a general if one is present. There is not often one present, but if there is one present, then that'll be present there. Delirium unique bosses. There are 2 of these that can spawn. There is Omniphobia, who can appear in any Delirious map, and there is Kosis, who will appear only in tier 14 and up. Now, Omniphobia has a percentage chance. Let's just turn off Wandering Path for this purpose. If you have Delusions of Persecution, your probability of encountering Omniphobia is equal to double the percentage delirious that the map is, and likewise for Kosis. This is capped at 100% for obvious reasons. If you do not have Delusions of Persecution, it is equal. So these are going to be very easy to find. All you really need to do is just a few 20% delirious tier 14 maps, and you'll get that done, and that will be fine. Debo's asking if I can timestamp this video. My plan is that because this is a stream, I don't expect that this is going to be something that's worthwhile people finding later. This is going to be something, like, I will do this video properly once the league is up, but this is more pre-league discussion and a stream version of it, chance to have a bit of a chat, and also to work out what things need to be clarified more, because there's always sometimes that I'll think of something in a challenge video and be like, oh yeah, this is straightforward, but someone else will be like, oh, how do you do that? And then I'll have to break it down. So it's good to have those sorts of questions there. Complete the last ritual in a map is pretty easy as well there. So it just means you need to do a single ritual encounter. So Divine Domination is basically sample a bunch of the Atlas mechanics and experiment around with them. Find the ones you like. That's GGG's intention with this one, is that it's a bit of a sampler. Now, Brutal Breaches. This one has something rude on it. This one requires you to do a genuinely difficult combat encounter, complete a Flawless Breachstone. So Flawless Breachstones are monster level 84. They have 4 random mods on them.
and the monsters have pretty substantially increased stats in them. And these can be like they're not as difficult. The Breach Lords themselves are not as difficult as an Uber boss, but you need a character that can clear to them as well. So this is one of the this is a content that is a hybrid of normal gameplay and also something a bit different, in that you've got to do a lot of clearing and a lot of bossing. So this is the hard part here. Completing Breach Stones times 4, completing breaches by 60, opening clasped hands by 50, all of that's straightforward, but a flawless Breach Stone is something you want to keep in mind. This is no joke here. This one's going to take a little while to do. Rumiko's Regal Rituals. We know nothing about this other than that you've got to do 7 of them. So this is one of the ones that we cannot say anything about. We just know these are the different things that you could do, but currently we don't have the full text of this. I will just check. Potential. No, that's going to be a flashbang if I do that. So let's not do that. Let's avoid the flashbang risk. That is not something that we've got more information on POEDB. So Rumiko's Regal Rituals, can't say anything about this yet. Broadly speaking, based upon how far down the challenge list it is, it's probably not too bad, but we shall find out. Harrowing Harbingers is next, and this one requires you to defeat Harbingers, Harbinger Rares, Harbinger Bosses, and complete red tier beachhead maps. Basically here, doing the beachheads will pretty much cover everything else. It's not absolutely every single thing you could do, but you're going to get the vast majority of it there. So as long as you do a few beachheads, now you can pick up beachhead maps. If you're in trade, they're usually easy to pick up in trade. But if you're not in trade, then you can apply Harbinger Orbs to maps. You will need to spec Harbinger for a little while in order to get enough Harbinger Orbs to do this, but this one's going to be pretty straightforward. It's just going to take a while. You'll notice that this is a common theme here. A number of these challenges are not... They're both a bit harder than the 321 challenges and also a bit longer. I think one of the things that Grinding Geek Games was going for with 321's challenges being so easy, they expected a lot of people to take a substantial break from PathOfExile for Diablo 4. I think they were expecting Diablo 4 to be a better received game than it was. It's not that no one likes it, but I know that when I tried it, I was so disappointed that I didn't buy it. And I had pretty low expectations going in, given, you know, Blizzard. It was a Blizzard thing, but it didn't even meet my low expectations. So for that reason, I felt like they deliberately set them easy, thinking people would walk away from the league. Then people got annoyed because they weren't that interested in D4 mostly. But yeah, these are at the ruder end. There's a bunch of things that are longer. Legendary Legions, you've got to unlock the 5-slot map device. This is something you probably want to do reasonably early in a league. My recommendation here is that if you're in Trade League, about the point that you unspec Stream of Consciousness, which you should do once you've got a little bit of a scarab pool, at this point, you're going to want to unlock the 5-way map device. So probably when you own 50 scarabs in solo self-found, I think is when I would say you want to unspec Stream of Consciousness. And that is going to be the priority there. Then on top of that, complete Legions is going to be straightforward. Legion Warhordes are the most shiny of the chests that you can get. So they're actually something you always want to open. They're one of the things that pulls you to doing Legions. And they come from memory from polished scarabs and up. Legion Generals in the domain of Timeless Conflict. 200 of them is a modest amount. It's not as terrifying as it sounds, but the easiest way to do this is unfortunately going to be to join one of the silly 5-way farming services, which will still exist despite the 56% reduction in XP that they're going to grant. There will still be lots of people that are doing them. So you might well get 30 generals in one 5-way service that's done that well. Now, one thing that I will warn though, this is going to be a nightmare in solo self-found. Getting 200 generals, especially in a context where you have to be your own resetter, I don't think you're easily going to get 15 of them in one run. So that one's going to be a while here. I've had a couple of questions about I'll just quickly take a side thing to answer the questions that are coming up about the shenanigans with uncompleted maps and Kirak missions. So the correct answer is Lava Chamber. Lava Chamber at the moment, like pending possible additions of new div cards to it, but there's nothing that looks likely. Lava Chamber has almost no rubbish div cards in it, It has the one, I think, for a unique rustic sash. It's got something like that, but that is just not that rare. Sorry, it's just not that common. It's not rare, but it's not common. And it has Divine Beauty. It has a bunch of other stuff. So it is going to be the Lava. It is going to be Lava Chamber, which is a tier 7 map. So do not run Lava Chamber if you're thinking of doing that. For those of you that might have missed that strategy, what you want to do is, while you're doing your Atlas, you're going to want to spec into Kirak Mission Replenish. So Commissioned Officer is the key for that. Get 3% additional chance to gain a Kirak Mission on map completion. And then you're going to want to run through all of your Atlas as usual, but never ever do the map Lava Chamber. Then, when you run a Kirak mission, once you've done every other map on the Atlas and you use a Explorer's Scouting Report, the one that gives you an uncompleted map, every map on it will be every single map that's on it will be Lava Chamber, and Lava Chamber will then occasionally have a mission that says, go into this map and find the stack of divination cards. With this stack of divination cards, it can be anything that is native to either the tile set or the boss, and it will respect the relative rarity of those cards. Now, Divine Beauty is a very valuable set of cards, and it is also a very large set of cards, which is absolutely perfect for the way that works. Basically, someone ran some numbers. I haven't verified these numbers myself, but they thought you'll make an average of 50 chaos per map if you do this. So potentially very, very strong if they're right. I haven't verified that, and I probably should put up a PSA on how to do that before the league goes live. In fact, I might set something to go up 2 hours before league start, just with a PSA, don't do Lava Chamber map, here's why. Because if the mechanics are exactly as they were before, this is going to be a ridiculously broken shenanigans. Lava Chamber wasn't on the Atlas last league, so unless they've made a stealth change, which they might have done. The key thing is when you do those Kirak missions, you don't actually kill the map boss again. You've just got to go in, do the mission, don't kill the map boss. Now, Delusional Delirium is next. Mirrors of Delirium times 30 is something you'll get through natural gameplay if you play a lot, but if you spec Delirium, you'll get it quickly. Gain rewards from Delirium encounters in maps times 300. So if you succeed at getting your Delirium encounter up to 531, which is what you might term an entry-level Delirium that you haven't done very well in, then that's going to count as 9. This is going to be fine. This is not hard. Unique Delirium boss, I think we already mentioned that. We had that for something else, didn't we? We had that for Delirium Unique boss for Divine Domination as well. This one's trivial. Waves of the Simulacrum is going to be pretty icky. So waves 1 to 18 of the Simulacrum tend to be pretty easy. 19 tends to be like put up a little bit of a fight. And then from 20 onwards, you're doing it at 100% Delirium. And there's also more map mods in play, and the Simulacrum has its own pool of map mods, some of which are really mean and do things that you can't otherwise encounter. For example, monsters that gain the ability to penetrate player chaos resistance, that starts showing up in the Simulacrum. There's a lot of unique challenges there. You will have a bit of trouble with this if you're in hardcore, and you want to play this very carefully in hardcore. If you're in solo self-found, then I would not attempt the Simulacrum unless you're familiar with it. Don't attempt it unless you're okay with taking a few deaths. So this one's... It's only 5 Simulacrums if you can go all the way to the end, but it's 10 if you can't. And that's going to be... this is going to be one of those ones that's genuinely quite hard for casual players. It's also something that you can't buy easily, because you're going to need to keep running Simulacrums. Of course, you can just buy 7 Simulacrums and take them all to level 17, and that gets you pretty much there. And most casual players could get to level 17 in the Simulacrum, at least 15 deathless. So then you need 10 of them. So that will be fine. If you're in hardcore though, you probably want to back out of the Simulacrum at wave 17. So complete 17, then just walk out, because there's so many things that can go unexpectedly wrong in the Simulacrum. It's a really mean zone. And again, it's all because monsters there were designed around some of the stats players have, tend to stack for defenses. They're often designed to counter that. And things like a Chaos Penetration is really mean. I don't think Simulacrums will be 5 Chaos this league. I think Simulacrums, because there's a challenge in there, and there's a challenge that involves bulk use of it, and there's also a new keystone that has something that severely interacts with Delirium. Where is that new keystone again? It's so let's just bring up the Delirium stuff. Is it here? Unending Nightmare is here, so this is something that causes some players who are using Delirium content will not be generating Simulacrum splinters. So there's a whole bunch of things that will cause this to go more expensive here. Hey, Autobomber, if you've just joined, you can rewind if you want, Autobomber. You can always rewind a live stream on YouTube and jump it up to 175% speed until you catch up. We are currently 25 minutes and 46 seconds in, so that will give you a sense as to whether that's worthwhile, or you can just stick with us. We're going to be talking about Relentless Rituals next. So Relentless Rituals is going to require you to complete rituals 100 times and reroll favors 100 times. Rerolling favors is going to be a lot more required runs of rituals. In fact, you're not going to get this without speccing ritual for a period. So you'll need to spec into ritual, and then that will speed up the rate at which you can reroll favors. Also, you need to defeat 200 map bosses in rituals, which is another one where you're probably going to want to bring bottled bosses with the blood-filled vessels. If you can bottle up a map boss that has two, like if you do a fight that's got 2 map bosses, bottle one or both of them, then that's going to turbocharge you through this. So this 200 isn't as big a number, but it is something that is worth knowing. Next, we have something that presumably requires you to use a bunch of things that we think are probably single-use items. So Freezing Wave Idol, I think that was shown off in the 3.22 original live stream. So we'll find out some more information on this. This is one that we can't really say a very large amount so far. Achieve Ascension is the next one, and this is one of those really important milestones in character progression. All of us veteran players know it well, but this is something that is here as a reminder to casual players who will find the first labyrinth and the second labyrinth, hopefully, that there is more of this, and that this should hopefully be a bit of an indicator as to when in progression you're going to want to do it. So achieving Ascension, doing the Eternal Labyrinth, is something that is a very big power milestone for any character, and something that you probably want to do reasonably early. Now, something that's worth pointing out, going back to questions around multiple map bosses in rituals, yeah, I think that if there's multiple bosses, and City Square's an excellent choice. If City Square's on the Atlas this league, I have to check that, then yeah, that's going to work together. That's going to make this a lot faster. If you can catch 4 bosses inside the area of this, then that's going to be 16. That's going to be 16 in your future ones, so that'll be fast. Someone is pointing out in chat that, the challenge, the armor that you get for the challenges actually transforms the way that enemy hit bars look. So there is something cool with it. So the idea so the way that the blood-filled vessels will work is that each one of them can contain an independent number of map bosses, and broadly speaking, if you were to throw a vessel in that has 2 map bosses in it, then that's going to count. The first ritual you do in that encounter, in that map, you're going to get 2 points towards this. The second one, you're going to get 2. The third, you're going to get 2. And then if there is a 4th one, which there will be on a Ritual Atlas, you're going to get another 2 again. So you get a total of 8 points towards this 200. This will be pretty easy to get if you're using blood-filled vessels. Of course, blood-filled vessels are clunky and awkward. Not absolutely clear on the HP stuff, whether it's a general update or whether it's something tied to the MTX. We can't tell, as the video that they showed doesn't make that clear. Hey, Gone. So, Achieve Ascension we were covering before, and then we have Divine Destiny. This is requiring you to turn in divination cards almost certainly. So this looks like it's a challenge that requires you to turn in a set of 1 or 2 cards. The easiest one for this is the Cartographer or the Heroic Shot. Those drop from strongboxes, from a currency strongbox for Heroic Shot and Cartographer's strongbox, but also just a bunch of other stuff for Cartographer. Also at 2, you've got the Easy Stroll, which will drop a lot from Searing Exarch Altars. 3, 4, 5, and 6. You'll get things for 3 and 4 from divination cards for maps, which come from Searing Exarch Altars. That'll be the path of least resistance here. There's a lot of sort of uncommon div cards for maps, but they're not rare, and you're always taking those specific Searing Exarch Altars when they show, because there's a few things they drop that are good. So that should be straightforward. That'll get you 3 and 4. That'll get you 5 and 6 with common cards only. 7 and 8, there is the Sword King's Salute, which is a very common divination card because Doresso's Salute is a tier 5 rarity unique. So that's going to be really, really easy to find. Then you have 9 or 10 is probably actually going to be Humility. I did reshare a video I did a couple of leagues ago on why you shouldn't farm Humility at league start anymore. I still stand by that, but it doesn't matter because you'll get this late in the league. So you'll probably pick up a set of Humility from Searing Exarch altars that generate unique items. So that'll be 9 copies of Humility because it's not a common card, but it's certainly not rare. And then at 11 or 12, the Chains That Bind is probably your first divination card turn-in for the league. If you follow the advice that I gave in that video, the first divination card you turn in is probably Chains That Bind. It's farmable in tiers 4 and 5, and it's something that will give you very, very decent setup. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of bosses that people are talking about that you can use where there's triple, just back on the thing we were talking about with the rituals, there's a whole bunch of triple map boss encounters. Please don't follow Sol's advice and get Vaal Temple bosses. They will wreck people. I mean, it is hilarious if you're doing it for yourself, but Kaj Ayalai from Vaal Temple is the one who has the projectile rain. So she fires the projectiles at you and then has that rain attack where she marks out an area on the ground and it's like just physical damage everywhere. It's really hard to survive, and especially because physical spell damage scales more with map mods than anything else that monsters can do to you, and as a result it's terrifying. So if you see a blood-filled vessel that has Kaj Ayalai in it, just assume that's going to kill you. It's really ruthless. There's a whole bunch of other things. And I like Gone's suggestion, yeah, turn in a Squire set because that's the easiest thing around to do for that. Hey, Chatwin. Hey, thank you for the membership. So we have Peddler's Produce 2 is another one that is encouraging you to research various vendor recipes you probably don't know about. Exalted Shards first. This one requires you to do the Chaos recipe, so vendor a rare item for every set in your inventory. Except with the Exalted Shard, they all need to have the same influence type on them. So if all of them have the same type of influence, then that will work. Orb of Fusing. I think the only way to get an Orb of Fusing from a vendor is to vendor a 6-link. So that's going to be one that's pretty easy to do in Trade League. And in Solo Self-Found, you will just incidentally come across these 6-link div cards. You're not going to get them often, but you will get them and you won't need them once you start doing your Searing Exarch altars, and maybe you'll even do Eater of Worlds altars for a bit. You'll also occasionally, like very rarely, you'll get a 6-link drop from monsters that are just from Arch Nemesis conversions, and also occasionally, it is a bit more common, you'll get them from either Strongboxes or from Corrupting Tempest in Elva's Temple. Any of those are options. And the Magic Ring or Amulet with Chaos Resistance one, I actually need to research that. Specific vendor recipe unique. This is going to be, for a lot of people, probably making the Dead Reckoning Jewel, even if you don't need to use it. So that one, I can never remember the last piece to it, but I think you need a level 20, or maybe it's 20 quality Summon Skeletons gem. As well as that, you need a unique wand, a rare wand, a magic wand, and a scoured wand that are all on the same name base type. So for instance, you can have Moon Sorrow, which from memory is a unique spiraled wand, then a rare spiraled wand, a magic spiraled wand, and a scoured one. Agnerod Staves is actually, forget I said that, H. Chatwin is right. Agnerod Staves is correct for the specific vendor recipe unique. So you want to vendor Agnerod North, Agnerod West, Agnerod South, Agnerod East, all 4 of those simultaneously. That will get you Vinkdar Square, and Vinkdar Square is needed for a later challenge. So that's the best bet. I don't believe that you can do what Gone is saying in chat, the vendoring 3 tabulas to get 1 tabula back, because I don't believe that that is counted as a specific vendor recipe unique. That's just a unique item vendor recipe, but not a specific one. That's one that applies for a whole bunch of different things. So we'll have to try and test that out. This is one I need to test in practice. I need to test, does the 3-for-1 recipe work? I think it won't, but we'll find that out. Does a whole bunch of other things, do these work? But yeah, I don't think 3-for-1 works, as we see there. Crucial construction, I am assuming from the way that this is written, that this is asking you one of two things. Either to use all of these currency items on items, or alternately, I can't rule out that this could be use all of these currencies with the crafting bench, because transmutes are used for crafts, augments are used, alts are used. Are chance orbs used for crafts at all on the bench? I'm trying to think if there's anything that uses them. Fuses are... Orb of Annulment isn't, so no, this is just to apply them to items. And Animus Stone is another one, and Hyri's Bite, yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things here. There's a whole bunch of options when it comes to the specific vendor recipe. Hyri's Bite I always forget is an option. But Animus Stone is another good choice. It's something, it's Trade League only really, Animus Stone, because it's quite an ordeal to farm that now. But it is something that you can use. Yeah, so Crucial Construction must be to use them because there's no benchcraft that requires you to use an Orb of Annulment. Now, of these currencies, there are two that are more valuable. Well, there's one that's much more valuable than the rest. That's the Divine Orb. Exalted Orb is next, and the Orb of Annulment is the rarest of all of these currencies. If you are in solo self-found and you're struggling to find your Orb of Annulment, the best bet to do this is going to be to farm your Harbingers. Harbingers will drop Annulment Shards. The only source in the game of Annulment Shards, but they do add up. So that's going to be the plan. It does look like it is use everything here. It looks like it is use absolutely everything. Tassalio's Traditional Tributes is the next one here, and this is going to require you to do everything. And thank you for the reminder on the Magic Jewelry with Chaos Res. I always forget that recipe. So it is Amethyst Flask, Augmentation Orb, and Magic Jewelry with either Chaos Res, or I think you can have no Chaos Res on it, because I think if it's got nothing, it brings it to bottom tier, and if you've got anything except tier 1 or tier 2, it brings it up a tier. I think that's the one that works. The Taming is an excellent choice as well. Albriso has pointed out for a specific vendor recipe unique. The Taming is Beric's Grip, Beric's Pass, and Beric's Respite. Of these, Beric's Grip and Beric's Pass are very common. Beric's Respite was very rare for a long period, but it is no longer very rare. It's not common. It's tier 3 rarity, so it's like 5 to 7 times as rare as the other pieces of that puzzle. But it's something you will get on your pathway to 95, and you might well get on your pathway to level 90. And so that one will be fine. So yeah, Tassalio's Traditional Tributes, we can't really say much about this. I think this is probably to receive these as rewards. Now, some of these are definitely going to be very rare, and some of these are things we don't know the effect of. Omen of Fortune, we know, is the Trash to Treasure replacement. So this is the Omen that, when it's in your inventory, if you apply a Chance Orb to something, the Chance Orb has the best possible effect of making the item unique, but the Omen is consumed. I believe that the Omen of the Jeweler will be a replica of one of the old things that relates to making either a 6-socket or a 5-link item. Probably a 5-link based on the name. Omen of Connections to be the one that makes a 6-link. So that'll be if you apply a Jeweler's Orb, then... Omen of Connections is probably, if you apply a Jeweler's Orb to an item and that item becomes 6-socketed, then it also becomes 6-linked. That's what it was historically. There's plenty of options here. And you need 18, but there's like 26 of them. So you can skip a bunch of these. I'm assuming that almost everyone is going to skip Omen of Fortune. That's going to be staggeringly rare. Almost everyone is going to skip Omen of Connections, assuming that that is a replacement for the old Faded Connections. But the rest of them, I can't say. I expect that this is going to be one that, well, I expect that all the tattoos will be reasonable. Loyalty and Honored tattoos will be a little bit harder, and that gets you most of them. And the Omen of the Soul Devourer just looks cool. It doesn't look like it's something that needs to be rare. Omen of Refreshment is similar. It's cool. It doesn't need to be rare. It's not super unbalancing or anything, although it'll be very powerful in hardcore. And yeah, that's basically where we're looking at there. Everything there should be fine. With Remarkable Realms is something that looks remarkably familiar. These realms have been around for a long time. It looks like it's the usual 17, isn't it? We don't have Hall of the Grandmasters. We do have Doriani's Machinarium, and we do have Vinctar Square. So those are the three that I always look for in this. Hoggum would be a nightmare, especially given that Hoggum just got buffed. But this looks like it's there altogether. This looks like it's going to be exactly a copy-paste from the current league. Doriani's Machinarium being here is kind of rude if you're in solo self-found. The solution is to allocate Planar Tactician. Obviously not with Wandering Path, but Planar Tactician will then give you a 20% chance for any scouting report that drops for you to be replaced with a comprehensive scouting report. These have a modest chance of awarding a tier 16 Doriani's Machinarium as one of the options. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of new Grandmasters, so that'll be really, really, really brutal. And that's just the way that it's gone there. One thing that's really interesting, I was talking to someone the other day, speaking of Hall of the Grandmasters, this map is super brutal, but it was like one of the things that was one of Reddit's most universally cheered nerfs in PathOfExile was when they took away the Atlas point for Hall of the Grandmasters. Because Hall of the Grandmasters is an ordeal to do, even in softcore, and they took away the Atlas point for it, and it's just like, it's a straight out nerf. It just reduces the amount of power you've got on the Atlas, albeit not by very much, but it was something that everyone was like super happy about. And yes, Doriani's Machinarium is from Delve. It drops with about a 20% drop rate from Ahuatotli the Blind, who interestingly is, I think, the most lucrative boss in the game now. Doriani's Machinarium drops from him, as does the Deadly End Ultimatum aspect. Those two drop from Ahuatotli, and Ahuatotli is a great fight too. Highly recommend if you get a shallow Ahuatotli, go in there without looking up a guide and try to work out what to do. Only in softcore, but try and work out what to do, because it's pretty forgiving to get back to him if you do die, and you'll be able to learn it in a couple of tries. It's really cool. Questions come up in chat about going above 100% chance for maps to drop one tier higher. I believe the answer is no, it doesn't help. I believe that that it is a soft cap of... I believe it's a soft cap of 100%. I don't think it goes higher now. It used to, but I don't think it does now. Except for maybe for Voidstones. Yeah, I've had comprehensive reports get Doriani's Machinarium quickly. It was quicker in the past. They removed the ability for it to roll on a comprehensive report as a white tier or yellow tier Kirak mission. It can only appear as a red tier mission now, but it still seems to be fine. And yeah, as Cinti's saying in chat, if you do generate a Doriani's Machinarium, you can sell portals to it to other players. You can do this either through the in-game chat channel Trade 820, or you can do it through the out-of-game Discord channel, The Forbidden Trove, and also potentially, like, you can, if you're in a guild or something like that, all of these are going to be options. But yeah, so that's some of the things that are there. But I say Ahuatotli's drops are generally worth more than All's at the moment. All's Uprising's only been like 1.25 Divines unidentified for a while, and All's Rings can sometimes be worth a bit, but they've not been worth much for a while. We have a Sanctum one here, and this one is going to be an interesting one. So complete a Sanctum floor is going to be pretty... Well, that's just a prerequisite for the next ones. Complete a Sanctum floor while you have a major boon. Major boons are rare. Now, this is not like it was in Sanctum League where you had to get a specific major boon, but here you are going to want to prioritize finding the bargains. Likewise, for the Accursed Pact, you're going to need to prioritize the bargains in order to get that. Sanctum mini-bosses are RNG. Sanctum guards should be easy, but then we have the nasty one. Complete a Sanctum while you have a unique relic active. So basically, this is just much harder than all the rest of it. Sanctum floor with a major boon and an Accursed Pact will probably actually be things that have a good chance of happening when you do the unique relic. Yeah, just on TFT, just remember that their moderation level is probably in line with most workplaces, and so like if you keep things civil, they're really good. You will find that a lot of the time people will complain about getting unreasonably banned there. I assume sometimes it is unreasonable, but the times I've researched those, every single one of them has been a scammer. Every single one of the people that's made a big post saying, hey, I was unfairly banned from TFT, On digging, there was something that they'd done. In one case, they actually had a whole bunch of evidence that the TFT ban was entirely justified. They'd been harassing people there, and they actually gave that information themselves. And then in the other one, they had stolen an item in a transaction. Then they went and made a post saying that they didn't. I don't doubt that TFT mods make mistakes, but they seem to act in pretty reasonable faith most of the time. Every time I researched it. But yeah, Trade 820 works as well. I think that they're both options. The thing is that in TFT, scammers get banned. In Trade 820, they don't. And so there's more of an issue. Like, you're more likely to get scammed in Trade 820. I've had people steal portals a couple of times in 820, whereas I've never seen it in TFT. And yeah, you can look up their names. That's another thing that's really good. And like Zeroshi's, yeah, you're saying you used to mod there. Like, I think there's going to be mistakes rather than malicious bans. Like, if someone maliciously banned someone just because they didn't like them, then TFT would remove that person over the mod over it. If it was, someone that just like was overly harsh, that's going to happen. But that happens anywhere, and usually they seem to unban them in that situation. But yeah, Ashling is a good example. You can charge more on TFT because people will trust you more. That's the key difference as a seller of services there. You can ask for more because if you scam the buyer, then they can retaliate against you. Whereas in Trade 820, it's just hope that GGG ban them, which they do sometimes. Anyways, that's a total sidetrack. Completely complicit corruption appears to require you to Val items into different things, and one of these is rude. So, Val temple maps. This is something that I think the easiest way to do this is actually going to be to trade for 5 Val temple maps, vendor them, then you have a new Val temple map, and then you apply a Val orb to that. The reason I say that is that raising a map from tier 16 to a Val temple map with a Val orb has been very rare the last couple of leagues. Historically, it was quite common. Then GGG made a few changes. Now, they are making more changes this league, but I'm kind of worried that Val temple map for this is going to be one that's going to require an average of 30, 40, 50 Val orbs at least, and maybe as many as 100, and that's the average. Then, of course, you're going to have the people who are the outliers who get really unlucky and don't get it in 200. There's been a bunch of people who have done full stash tabs, like quad tabs of maps to Val them, because there's a little bit of a project to work out the probability of it, and it seems like it's 2%. It seems like it was common to get 10, 11, 12 when you Val an entire 576 maps. So this is going to be one that, if that hasn't changed, this is going to be mean. Everything else, though, yeah, you're going to... There is a later 8-mod map challenge, but that from memory is the... I think that's the grinding grind... Whatever endgame grinds is called now. I think that's that one. Questions come up about Valing side areas. Yes, you can do it. That was mentioned previously. But your probability of... Like, what you can get out of that isn't known. There's not anything on POEDB, to the best of my knowledge, about Val side areas. I'm just going to have a look and see if that's changed, actually. So we have in maps... hang on. No, sorry. I want to go into modifiers, don't I? Modifiers, then we go down to... what do we have? Special... Atlas Memories, no. What do we got? Is it maybe side area? Not under that. Atlas is... Maps old, no. I don't think there's anything here. Now, a good question from Albriso has come up here about Valing tier 15 maps. This was an explicit change. A couple of leagues ago, they changed it so that it went from being, and this was in 3.17, it went from being a common occurrence of Valing a tier 15 to a rare occurrence of Valing a 16. That was when they added the 10 extra special chests into Val Temple. So 3.17, they did that. That is no longer the case that you can do that. The unique Val side areas could be interesting, yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what those are and whether they're any good or not. I wouldn't be surprised if one of them is rubbish and the others are like, have some potential. Cross-contamination is one of those rude ones that requires you to do things together that sometimes are not really going to work well together. So defeat a possessed map boss while in a ritual. This one's easy. This one is not something you can necessarily do every time you try, but every time that you get a map that rolls with the mod, possessed mod on it, the map bosses are possessed. Thank you for the super chat, Daniel. May your Valobs have interesting results. So every time you get a possessed map boss while in a ritual, if you've got a map that has the mod on it that says that the map boss is going to be possessed, then at that point you want to throw in a ritual blood-filled vessel into the map device, and you'll probably be 50-50 whether you'll get it or not. So that's rude. And like Tumblr is saying, this is going to be rippy in hardcore. If you're playing in hardcore, what you want to do is scour a map, transmute it, alteration it. You want to do this in tier 1. So tier 1 only. You want to grab a tier 1 map, scour it, transmute it, alteration it until you get the possessed mod. I think that's available as a tier 1 mod. I'm just going to check that. So maps low. Yes, unique bosses are possessed is a mod on tier 1 maps. So you want to roll that, and then you want to then hope that the boss is in the ritual. That'll be fine. That won't be too bad. And as well as that, you can also probably get the that to spawn. Yeah, that'll be fine. That one won't be too bad. Legion General while you're in a breach. This is going to be a case of running maps that have both of these mechanics on your atlas. Then when you get the Legion General, walking it over to the breach. Or here's your alternative. You use Val Breach. And I think that's going to be the easiest way. Question that's come up that's a good one in chat there is possess map bosses while you're in a ritual. Can you bait a boss to it? No, that probably doesn't work because, unless you might be able to bait the possessed map boss into the area of the ritual, then start the ritual. But if you kill the ritual boss, then do that, then that's not going to work. And there is a ritual that possesses things. That's a very good point from Tumblr as well. There is the Haunted Ritual. I'd forgotten that thing existed. That just disgorges a ridiculous amount of spirits. It's not common, but that's going to make this one easier. So there's a whole lot of ways to do this. But as Tumblr mentions, super, super, super rippy in hardcore as well. Woofs is asking, haven't played since Lake of Calandra. Are there any big changes you need to be aware of? Did you play during Lake of Calandra or did you play after it? Now, Val Breach is a question that's coming up. How do you get it? Val Breach is staggeringly rare now. It's not expensive because people don't want it, but it is a rare drop from Uber Breach Lords, and it is also a divination card that appears to only be available when you use sextants that add mysterious barrels. It seems to be something that drops from those barrels. So very, very, very rare. You can no longer get a Val Breach by applying a Val Orb to a portal gem under any circumstances. This is no longer doable and hasn't been doable for quite some time. Not since 3.12 was the last time you could do that. So yeah, Wolves, if you played at the beginning of Lake, the altars have changed a lot. So let's just take a quick aside with the Eldritch altars. The rewards that you get will be explained on them. They're different to what they were in Calandra. They're broadly speaking better than they were then, but the downsides are meaner. The downsides are meaner, and you will often you'll at least occasionally come across ones you can't do. If in doubt, run Searing Exarch. Searing Exarch altars are stronger. This means that you probably want a character that is well tanked against fire and chaos damage if you can, because Searing Exarch mods, they mostly do fire damage, but they have a bit of chaos. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. There have been a few new divination cards, including Brother's Gift added to Cemetery map. Brother's Gift is basically Brother's Stash, but for Divine Orbs instead of Exalts. And those are the things that jump out at me. So, yeah, League start is in 10 hours and 1 minute from now. A defeat a Breach Lord while Delirious is going to be one of the more straightforward ones. 20% Delirious map, this one won't be hard. You will need to have a Breach Lord pop up in your map, and this can be done in lower tiers. So this is one that you could probably most easily do if you spec on the Atlas. If you spec, what's it called, Pathological, again, let me just remove Wandering Path for a sec. If you spec Pathological, maps found in your maps have 3% plus 1% chance to have a layer of Delirium. then you will find that occasionally you will get delirium maps that drop with delirium orbs pre-applied to them. Use those in low tier maps in conjunction with breach scarabs, and you will get this one in a reasonable amount of time. That's going to be the best. TJ, you must be in Adelaide if it's 5:30 for you. I'm in Melbourne, so I'm at 6 o'clock for me. Oh yeah, good question. Wolfs has been asking what's happened with Arch Nemesis. All the mods have been nerfed pretty hard. They're still, some of them are still mean, but, and I guess the other thing is that the Arch Nemesis rare monster conversion loot is no longer, it's more RNG than it used to be, which actually has ended up being better. Like, it's, you can't plan on thinking, oh, this is a Lunaris Touch mob, it's going to explode in currency, so I need to call in a color. Instead, it's, this is a Lunaris Touch mob, this is going to have better than normal loot, but I don't know in what way it's going to be better, and it's not worth my while getting a color. Okay, defeat a Beyond boss while under the effect of a shrine. Beyond bosses have been buffed quite a bit. The easiest way to achieve this is to equip the unique chess piece Blunderbore, but that is tier 1 or tier 2 rarity. And related, you could equip the Gull, the unique helmet. That is also tier 1 or tier 2 rarity. So neither of those are easily or reliable. The other way to do this is just to spawn a Beyond boss and then bring it to the shrine. That'll be the way to go there. Defeat a Metamorph and a Harbinger within 10 seconds of the first dying. Here, what you're going to want to do is to bring the Metamorph to... no. You want to fight the Harbinger, and then once the Harbinger is close to defeated, you then want to go off screen and summon the Metamorph. That's going to be your solution to doing that. Defeat an Essence monster while affected by a Tempest. The only places in the game that Tempest still exist is, unless there's some from the new Hinekora content, the only place is inside... No, this actually can't be done in Standard. This is going to absolutely require an Omen, because you cannot get Essence monsters, I don't believe, inside the Temple of Atzoatl, and the Temple of Atzoatl is the only place that I can name that has Tempest. Am I seeing anything on this? Krolya is Blunderbore tier 3? Is Blunderbore tier 3 now? Let me recheck that. I'm just going to bring that up. This is Krolya's in the team of people that have been working out all of the rarities from unique items, but that one really actually surprises me if that's correct. Let me just bring that up. Retiering uniques. And Blunderbore. Where are we? So the team that were retiering uniques, they found 7 of them in 24,000 uniques, and based upon that, it is either tier 2 or tier 3. Yep, they've ruled out tier 1, and they're saying it's definitely 2 or 3. So that's interesting. I thought that it was there. And Thornburg makes a point there that Corrupting Tempest does still exist as a mod that you can get in conjunction with the special Kirak stuff that comes from Shaping the Skies. So Shaping the Skies, again, let me remove Wandering Path, and let's actually keep it off for the moment. 3% chance on completing a maps to gain a free use of a special map crafting option. This can include Corrupting Tempest, and that's going to be the way to do that. So that's going to be the correct thing there. You've been watching that. Krolya, you've been doing that, haven't you? I thought, were you just watching it? You're just in there, the same as me, you're just watching everything that's going on and discussing it. So it is the Corrupting Tempest is something you can get in the Temple of Atzoatl, but you can also get it here with Shaping the Skies. This makes me think that you probably want to spec Shaping the Skies quite early in progression. That's going to be the thing you're going to want to do there. Spec Shaping the Skies. I mean, if you were to use something akin to my Atlas setup, probably at the point that you drop Wandering Path, you would want to then pick up Shaping the Skies. And the Tempests are all over the place. If you have that room, even the tier 1 version, then Tempests will be all over the place. They're the big circles that look sort of like a Stormcall with no obvious source for them. So that's defeat an Essence monster while affected by a Tempest. It is probably done only with that Kirak node, or with stuff that may be related to the Trials of the Ancestors content. Tukahama's Tough Tribulations here is something we can't tell what this is. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16. We have more than 30 choices, so you don't need to do all of them. Some of these are probably rare. We shall find that one out there. And Maestro Mastery next. Oh, this is so this requires precision boss kills. All the Crystal King. Now you only need to do 3 of these. So the Syndicate Mastermind in a level 83 area without taking any damage from their sculpture. The sculpture spits waves of flame at you. This is not hard to do. This is something you can practice now if you want in standard, but it's genuinely not that hard. We have Ara, Sister of Light, or Core, Sister of Shadows, so Solaris or Lunaris, without being hit by Skybeam or Glaives. That feels like something that's going to come down to bursting those guys down real fast. That one's not too hard here. Amalgam of Nightmares without being hit by Stormcall, not too bad. That's the Act 9 boss in Carcass Map. This is one you're probably going to fail a couple of times just by making mistakes, but it's because it's not something that you have to dodge. Katava without being hit by Fire Breath should probably happen in general. Like, you'll get hit by this if you make a mistake, but this is one that should be pretty easy to do. And Laser Barrage in Sunken City map from Amala the Widow. That's Arakali. Her Laser Barrage is moderately hard to dodge the first strike of. It's easy to not get hit twice or 3 times by, but the first strike of this will sometimes happen when you're not ready for it. So that one's not too bad. And someone's saying that they think that these are all monster level 83. Hang on. Sorry, we've just gotten confused. I skipped ahead. Yeah. All right. See, this is the good thing about recording content, is that I could have avoided looking like an idiot there, because I would have realized what I'd done, and then you would never have seen it. That would have been a shirt change. People have all been talking about how all the time it's like I'll start out wearing a jacket, and then suddenly halfway through the video it'll be wearing the Toucan shirt again, and that's the reason. That's often it's because I pick up something stupid like that. So yeah, let's just start with Revered Revenge Retold. This one is all straightforward, but then Maestro Mastery. Syndicate Mastermind without taking damage from Sculpture is not that hard. Any Bestiary boss while you have a Bestial aspect active. So this just means do 2 Bestiary bosses total. First one to get the aspect craft, throw it onto something that's not important, like that's not disruptive to equip, and then go back in and do it. That should be easy enough. Val Omnitect while you have a Tempest and Lightning Exposure. Val Omnitect's ability that inflicts Lightning Exposure is the Lightning Propagating Wave. That thing does staggering damage, so I think a lot of players are going to struggle with this one if they're playing a squishy character. You also need to have a Tempest active, so that reduces your ability to time things tightly. This one's going to be nasty, because you've got to be able to tank a pretty hard hit in order to get Lightning Exposure there. Unless there's a way to self-inflict Lightning Exposure, that nothing's jumping in my head at the moment, but I'm pretty sure that that's there. So that one's, that's one to remember. And then All the Crystal King, after destroying all the crystalline cocoons, this is the one for people who want to show off. So Val Omnitect is the easier choice. That's the Path of Least Resistance is doing 2, 3, and 4. All the Crystal King is for people who want to show off. And the other, and then you can drop the Val Omnitect one, which is not trivial. And I think everything there should be fine. Now, Mechanical Mayhem. This is going to come down to what counts how many times. Does it count once to do every breach in a map? Or does it count 6 times if you do all 6 breaches in a map? I think it should be 6. That's my rating here, but I'm not absolutely certain on this. This is going to be one where doing a mechanic like Heist, and as you can see, this is my initial projected Atlas tree. I have all of the Heist support except for the stuff that gets bricked by Wandering Path. And I'm intending to get 7th Gate set up quickly and start farming those contracts to sell off to people, maybe even run some myself. But that's one of the things I'm planning on doing there. I'm going to have no trouble getting this challenge done, because this challenge is going to potentially, like, I'm going to get 6 points of progress to it every time I get 6 of, every time that I get 6 of the Smuggler's Caches. But that's assuming that I'm right about how that works. So we'll figure that one out there. And is everyone saying that the trees are looking similar? That convergence is interesting. See, I was talking to Crouching Tuna this morning. He put out a video. His video is fantastic. If you haven't watched it, do. Watch Crouching Tuna's recent video about why he's able to get from tier 1 maps to tier 16 maps in 4 hours. But his video outlines the very basics of the start of this tree, and then I diverge at some point. And at some point you're going to drop Wandering Path, and then you're going to spec into Expedition. But then essentially I have all the Expedition support, all the heist support, and I can spec, like once I get a few more points, I can spec into a couple of extra luxuries, probably shrines. That's the sort of thing I'd be looking at grabbing there. So that's the sort of the plan, yeah. Okay, so we have that 1,000 is going to be messy if you're doing longer things. Like if you're doing Expedition as your primary mechanic, this is going to be a nightmare. On the flip side, if you're doing something that is much slower, much faster, like the heist, smuggle caches, or breaches, or legions even, if you're fast with them, then that's going to be way better. Enraging Echoes is something that we can't really work out what this is. Engaging Echoes, sorry. Abyss, Ambush, Bestiary, Breach, Domination, Essence, Harbinger, Harvest, Incursion, Torment. I would hazard a guess that this is to use 6 of these from the map device, maybe, which is something that you can only do if you have a 7th gate set up. So I think this might be requiring you to go 7th gate, but I am just guessing there. That's something we'll have to get more information once we get the actual challenge there. And the question on the thing that you're saying about the Kirak wheel, yeah, I could go around another way instead. It's just that the extra maps early on. I will drop that stuff later. So Atlas Memories is the other possibility. So Abyss, yes. Ambush. Oh yeah, Cascading Strongbox. Do you have an Incursion? Yeah, you're right. Okay, John is correct. This is actually not that. This is to do something related to Atlas Memories. Probably complete the last map of an Atlas Memory. And then in that case, that would be to do 6 of them, which is going to be something that will be nasty in SSF if you're not going to get this on your path to 24 in SSF. But yeah, this will definitely be the Atlas Memories. Oh, down the bottom you're saying this stuff here. Yeah, I'll path differently at some point. That's fine. This stuff. Yeah, I'm just going to use Kirak early. I will rechange that. I'll be respecking out of that. Challenge rewards are out as well. Let me just give you a link to those. They came out about 3 hours ago. Jacob's asking there, 2 or 3 hours ago. So it was very late, and it's not going to be in my daily recap video because it was so late. It's something that will not be fitting into any of the recap videos because I have done all of those that are going to happen. Okay, so Navali's Neverending Nirvana. This one is something that requires you to do hard mode versions of the new content, I think. No comparison as to what exactly, no clarification on what that is. Reach a total of 1,000 by defeating witness map bosses, activating Eldritch Altars, or completing maps with scarabs or sextant modifiers. Each scarab and each sextant modifier applies to maps counts towards this challenge. Okay, so here you can do quad scarab, quad sextant maps with Eldritch Altars in them. You're going to get this really quickly. Like, this is a grindy challenge, but it's only telling you to do 80 maps and do them well. That's all this is really requiring you to do. Cruel Custodian Crucible requires you to do 6 of these maps, but who knows what the other conditions are. This could be complete these maps while they're 100% delirious and rare and have 8 mods, in which case it's horrendous, or it could be something that's much easier, like just complete these maps. It's probably something like have the Maven witness these maps, or maybe they decide to be a troll and make it have the Searing Exarch witness these maps. But whatever it is, it's going to be one that, like, it seems like it's just going to be do a bunch of Atlas mini-boss maps, and that should be quite easy to get your hands on once you know these fights. If you don't know the fights, then you're going to need to learn them. But this is just normal gameplay. This one is named Insane Invitations. That makes me think that this is not just do these invitations. I think this is going to be a much harder version of that. This is going to require you to do the Feared, probably with 80% quantity. Maybe even if they decide to be really mean, they'll make it 8 mod. This could be really mean. You got Incandescent and Screaming as well. Those tend to be easier than the other ones, but they also do scale pretty aggressively with map mods. So this collection of mods is going to be pretty mean. Unlock every favoured map slot is basically saying, please do the Feared, please do Cirrus, and then I think everything else is a prereq for the Feared, isn't it? You have... Oh no, and please get your Void Stones. Voidstone, Cirrus, and the Feared, and everything else is a prereq for those. So that's going to be there. We have here the Hinakora's Harrowing Haul, which is again something we can't really say that much about because we don't know the context that it's involved in. And then Antagonistic Adversaries is requiring you to do bosses probably at monster level 83. Abyss Lich will be easy to get. They're not free, but they're not that hard. Ashabi is a nightmare to find, but you can easily trade for it. Vox Twins doesn't take very long to farm if you have a high stat list, and you also have done the quest chains, which start with O Eternal. What is it? It's O Eternal, then it's the one where the cat dies, then it's the one where you get mad when after the cat dies, and then there's the Vox Twins. Maven's Invitation of the Forgotten is not, from memory, one of the... It's got an Atlas point, but it doesn't have a favoured map slot. And whilst you do need to do a Shaper and Elder Guardian, they're prerequisites for doing Uber Elder. So that's why I counted them as a prereq. So Vox Twins is pretty easy. Olroth Origin of the Fall is the hardest of the expedition bosses. And also, like, he's pretty easy if you get him in a scoured... logbook, and he's pretty mean if there's map mods in play. If you're not sure of how to do Olroth, what I suggest you do is you just run the appropriate logbook scoured. It's a little bit wasteful, but not massively so. You will get them soon enough. Lycia, Herald of the Scourge, is a boss that does put up a bit of fight. She was added in 320 and is obviously something very important to give a go to because a lot of drops from the Scourge, and especially a lot of drops from the Sanctum. Presumably this is a Zaro in level 83, and we've got more on that later. This will be part of your Path of Least Resistance, and the Trial Master is the easiest fight of these, but is except for the twins, but is the hardest to access of them. So Ashabi is the hardest to access. Trial Master is second. There is also the new changes that are coming to Val's side areas are going to make the Trial Master more accessible, because one of the things that is available as a mod, and I think this will be quite rare, the Val side area end chest contains an additional ultimatum fragment. And oh yeah, good point. Uhtred is probably comparable, but that's going to be something we'll take a bit of messing around with. Your Path of Least Resistance here, I think, is going to be to do Izaro. I think Lycia will be expensive to access. The Vox Twins, an Abyss Lich, and just one of the others. That'll be the easiest way. Now, Predicated Pinnacle Powers. We do not know whether this is Uber or not. If this is non-Uber, then doing 5 of these is pretty fair enough. Cirrus without being hit by spinning negation beams is going to be something that is an execution challenge, but as long as you've got a teleport move skill that does not path through the intervening ground, then that's doable, albeit non-trivial. Spinning negation beams are the ones where there's a 4-way beam that spins around. Looks sort of like the player skill flamethrower trap. The Uber version of this is it's the same thing except there's 6 beams instead of 4. And also, of course, Uber Cirrus is just a much harder fight and it goes longer, both because the boss does more deadly things, so you need to spend more time dodging, and also because the boss has a lot more health, or least effective health. He has 70% damage reduction on Uber. So Cirrus without being hit by spinning negation beams on Uber is going to be mean, if that's the case. But the Maven one is ridiculous if this is on Uber, because you need to dodge the coils for three memory games in the final phase, means 150 seconds of perfectly dodging all the coils. Because if you get tagged by a coil beam at all, then that will inflict Maven's punishment on you. Additionally, on the Uber version, her laser rake also inflicts that, and that's going to make it really nasty. Maven without doing 3 final phase memory games is going to make you prolong the fight, and this one's going to be really, really brutal. The Shaper without being hit by any of his or his clone's skills other than the basic attack. This is basically playing the Shaper as though you only have 1 health. This is pretty tough, mostly because of, well, I think this comes down to whether the volatile anomalies are considered to be the Shaper or not. If they're considered to be the Shaper, then this is a lot harder, because then you've got to balance the period where you've got bullet hells. I think in that case, you're probably going to need to do this fast. The hardest part for this is going to be the transition between the Zana's bubblers up and the, during bullet hell, and then the Shaper doing a beam. If this is Uber Shaper, then Uber Shaper has the bullet hell with no shield, so you're going to have to manually dodge the entirety of the bullet hell. Most players who farm Uber Shaper build tank enough that they can make mistakes during bullet hell. So that's going to be really, really brutal. Oh, no, the way that I read this, where it says non-basic attack skills, I read this as basic attack is one phrase. So the non applies to both basic and attacks, because Shaper doesn't have any attacks other than his basic. Everything else is a special skill. So basically this is going to be one where if you've got extreme burst damage, you can do that. And this is going to be very hard if you don't have extreme burst damage. Cortex, when there are at least 12 void pits or pylons active, yeah, just how about no? Defeat the Elder within 10 seconds of defeating the Shaper. This is a pure DPS race. If you're doing this on regular Uber Elder, this means 1.8 million DPS on a Pinnacle boss. If you're doing this on Uber Duber Elder, then this requires something like 6 million boss DPS on a Pinnacle boss. And I think both of those numbers are very, very accessible. The second one, the hardest part, is actually going to be getting to that point. Additionally, it's not just 6 million DPS, because you're also going to need to have you're going to need to reposition between the two as well. The key thing is going to be slaying the Shaper when the Elder is not doing something that's going to disrupt your damage planning. So ideally you want the Shaper to have you want the Elder to have his slam on cooldown when you slay the Shaper. And additionally, you want him to not be doing his Void Siphon. No, he doesn't do his Void Siphon at that point, does he? So yeah, that's the key thing. You just want him to have his slam on cooldown. I think you can't bring them down simultaneously. I feel like you can only get them both. You can only get the Shaper to. Like, it's been a while since I've done Uber Elder without being able to just annihilate it. Usually, if my character is not strong enough that I can just thump it, I usually engage a carry service. So that's what I did in the temp league that I ran recently. Yeah, this one's tough. Searing Exarch without being affected by cauterized flesh. This is just RNG. Like, these things can spawn underneath you, and that's brutal. That is brutal. Eater of Worlds does have tentacles on normal and Uber, so like this is easy if it's not Uber. If it's Uber, I think this really just comes down to burst damage. So they're both vulnerable in the last phase of Uber Elder. It's just that Elder can't die until Shaper is dead. Crowley is going to test that quickly. So Crowley is going to load up a character in Standard and give that a shot and get us an authoritative answer on that. And then finally we have Endgame Grinds, which is now called Grand Gripping Grail. These names are getting worse. I tell you, these names are getting worse. You've got to do 4 of these. Level 100 is more of an ordeal than it's been in the past because of the Domain of Timeless Conflict nerfs. You are going to need a tankier character to do this, or you can do a whole bunch of messing around in other side content. Valve side areas or Trials of Ascendancy in red tier maps. So the section on the Trial of Glory cluster on the Atlas passive tree is something everyone forgets how good this is. So again, Wandering Path, go away. This is the cluster that gives you a total across the whole cluster of 10% chance to have a Trial of Ascendancy on top of the baseline 8%, but 20% of them will award an improved offering to the goddess instead. So what this means is that in 3.6% of the maps that you open, there will be an Uber Trial of the Goddess, and that will stand out. 14.4% of the maps you open, there'll be a regular Trial of the Goddess that you just walk straight past, and the rest you just ignore. This one is definitely going to be this is a really good cluster, especially in this league, and I think that this is going to be something I will take as soon as I drop Wandering Path Forever. Then at that point, it's going to be one of the things I want to take pretty early on. But 50 Vile side areas or Trials of Ascendancy seems like it's pretty easy. That's a good point that John's making in chat, that level 100 does have the advantage of Beyond being available both as a keystone and also Beyond as a Kirak mod, Beyond support on the tree. All of this is multiplicative sources of XP. There's also the Beyond Sextant. There's a whole bunch of things you can do there that all stack together. So that's all good stuff there. Open chest at the end of the Empowered Endgame Labyrinth. I am really glad to see that this is not the standard level 75 Labyrinth that everyone is bored of. This is going to be the Uber one. Someone's just asked a question on Vile side areas here. Vile side areas, I'm reading the OR clause to be, like, I'm reading it to be, this is all applied to in red tier maps. So I guess you can say this is complete Vile side areas in red tier maps or complete Trials of Ascendancy in red tier maps. That's the way I'm reading it. There is another way you could read this, which is complete Vile side areas under any circumstances or complete Trials of Ascendancy in red tier maps. The way that I read it, I'm just going to assume that requires Vile side areas that are spawned from red tier maps. So 75 chests at the end of the Empowered Endgame Labyrinth is, like people are saying in chat, this is easier than the 50... this is going to... Your 50 trial tokens that you get will easily do this, because you'll probably get 4 chests on average when you're doing one of these lab runs. But this is just going to be fun. Like, the level 83 labs are interesting. They're exciting nowadays still. A level 75 lab is something that, it's great content if you're a new player, but if you've been around the block for a while, it's just a stepping stone that's once a league. And so that's sort of pretty meh. But yeah, opening chests, and it only counts the end chests, so the Tribute Labyrinth, where you probably do want to do the silver keys, and I'm actually thinking I'm going to do a silver key day during next week. But the silver keys are not an option here. Red tier maps with 8 modifiers times 100. Now, this is easiest done if you have the Sextant mod that causes all of your maps to drop corrupted rare with 8 mods. This Sextant mod is pretty rare, and it does trade for quite a bit, but it is something that you can look for, and it's something that is really, really good, and it will help you do this quicker. But if you don't, you can just Vile maps, and you'll eventually get there. Like, I think the people that are doing Grand Gripping Grail are going to run that many maps. The key thing is that you need to not be bricking too many maps there, because that's going to really sort of wreck you. Krolya has just confirmed you can damage both bosses in Uber Elder in the last 25%, so that means that this is not a DPS race in any way, shape or form. All you need to do is just be able to complete the fight and preserve the life of the Shaper until you're ready to finish it all off. Yeah, Krolya, sorry, it looks like after... How many labyrinths did you do in my private league? How many Eternal and Uber Duber labs did you do? Because that's going to be pretty brutal. Someone's made a very good point about this 8 mod maps. Yes, Kirak can provide 8 mod maps, and he often will. That's an excellent tip. That is a really, really good one there. So that's something that, that is definitely going to be really useful. Complete red tier maps with Atlas memory modifiers and at least 80% item quantity. 125 of these is quite a lot, and I'm going to say that this is one that is not on the path of least resistance, most likely. I feel like the path of least resistance is the first 4, with the possible exception that the final one could replace the Uber Duber Labyrinth. That'll be the situation. We'll see how many of these Uber Duber Labyrinths Krolya did during my private league. Speaking of the private league, I'm thinking of running a private league either day 28 or day 42 of the league. Now, there's a popular private league called Badger Private League that if people haven't played, it's great. It's on day 35 of this league, so that's the reason that I'm hesitating between which of these 2 times to pick. I'm going to pick it based upon interest in the league. And, yeah. I think the key thing here... Yeah, and the comment about overjuicing memory maps is real. Like, memory maps are scary, especially because memory maps essentially, they have the effect of the top hat. This top hat is extremely brutal. Like, these things that add 4% increase effect of modifiers on your non-unique maps. This stat is terrifying. This thing really, really makes things mean, and definitely makes, you take a lot of damage, and it really sabotages your character's power a lot. So that's something to keep in mind, that these things are no joke, and the memory maps will have that built into them, because they'll have up to 60% increased effective mods on them. I know that there was one time that I was doing it, and we had the 60% reduced recovery rate, which then scaled up to 96%, and I was just like, I'd go in the door into the harvest, I would throw down, I think it was a trapper at the time, throw down a bunch of traps, and if a monster hit me, I would have to very quickly get out the door again, because I would then have to just sit and wait for my life to recover over a period of ages, or I could drink a life flask, and then I'd have to wait for the Rizlatha Pantheon to bring it back. So it was really, really mean. So yeah, those are vicious. Elbriso is asking the best way to increase the drop rate of Atlas memories. This is an open question. All we know is that increased item quantity does not help in any way. Item quantity has been proven not to affect these, because someone in Standard did a test where they equipped minus 100% increased item quantity, so 100% reduced, and in that situation, the only drops you get are ones that aren't affected by IIQ. So item quantity doesn't work. Memories use Kirax Atlas, but they have the effect of those nodes, is what I'm saying. So that is the challenges for this league. That's a first look at them all, and I think we'll be able to. I think that we'll be able to discuss these in more detail. I kind of want to maybe in week 2 or week 3 put out a detailed guide to all of them. I feel like this video is in a lot of ways the brainstorming session for it. People have been asking questions about the character that I am thinking of starting, which is the Righteous Fire Chieftain. This is a work in progress currently, but let me just bring up the export notes so people can have a look at least at where we are currently. This is where we currently are with it, but there's a whole bunch of stuff left to be added into it. So what we need to get in here is we need to get curses. We also have to mess around with a few things. At the moment we're sitting on a 5-link with level 19 Searing Bond, and the 5-link is pretty terrible item. We're forced to use Life Tap currently. I don't want to keep using Life Tap. I want to find a better solution. I want to be using Ironwood support as a 6-link just because Ironwood just looks so fun. And that's why I have a little bit of investment in Ignite on the character. But that is just me being cute and silly. That is not me being sensible. So a whole bunch of things that are... a whole bunch of things in here that are not yet at a point that I can say, hey, here's a guide. Will I be streaming on League Start? I guess that's a question from Neverscry there. Yeah, I will, but over on Twitch, not here. So I stream to YouTube if I think it's something people might be interested in watching after the fact. And if it's something that's only about then and there, then I stream to Twitch instead. Anyways, it is 8:32 on League Start Eve here, and I kind of want to... Well, League Start is at 6 o'clock, but I kind of want to get up at 4 o'clock, and I kind of want to also make another video before then. So with all that in mind, let's just have a quick look at this last rights node that's being discussed so that I can remind myself what it is. Last rights. Can you clarify what last rights was? Was it an Atlas node? Was it a player node? Oh, there it is. Last rights. Curse enemies you kill are destroyed. Yeah, look, this is a problem fixer. This is something I would say Juggernaut should have. And also you got this is a pretty good node. This is a pretty good node as well. But this is something a Juggernaut should have, because their damage against the monsters that they're likely to curse is going to be lower, because the resist is still going to be over 75% sometimes. But I think I'm more okay. For starters, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to keep it in mind as an option that I can use as a fallback if I end up having more trouble than I expect. So let's just have a quick look at the other comments and then we'll wind this up. So I'm going to make a video on trauma support and the frost breath. I don't even know if that's a meme or not. It may be all right. I'm just not entirely certain. But yeah, I guess we'll find out on that. That's going to be... Like, I'm not intending to make a video, though. That might be something I play later on. We shall see what we end up... what ends up being... Feeling like the right thing for there. Spec Shadow, I am still in complete trash gear at the moment, and also the Tassalio node doesn't work in POB yet. I also haven't I haven't put any gear in yet. That's what I'm saying. This isn't anything ready. But the main thing is that Tassalio doesn't function, so my resists are my resist showing as like minus 18% lightning resist. I'm overcapped on lightning resist. I'm actually overcapped, but that's because this node is overcapping me. Same for cold resist and lightning resist. This node is overcapping me, but the game isn't telling that. So if we were to say, why don't we just go into the go into the calcs? Where's the thing to get a specific, to make a specific modification? There's a way to do that. I'm just looking for it. It's configuration, isn't it? Yeah, custom modifiers. Let's do this, and then that should fix some of the worst of it. But we're not sorted yet. We are not sorted as yet. So it's there's a lot more to do on this. That's why it's not something I'll put a video out on yet. Oh, and speaking of the heist pet, yeah, I have a setup in my hideout at the moment where the heist pet is next to the Scourge theme map device that shreds them all. Yes, so Ruin is asking again. I've got to make this video first, actually. The first thing I got to do is make the video on what to do with... why not to run Lava Chamber. So, Lava Chamber. The idea here is that with Lava Chamber, that is the map that has, at least based on... Unless there's a stealth change, it has the best divination cards on average. So if we have a look at the divination cards for Lava Chamber... let me not open that in this main window because that will be a bad flashbang when I do that. Let's do it here. So, Lava Chamber map. Okay, so there is a divination card in this map called... Okay, there is Burning Blood. This has a drop weight of 91, so you're not going to see it often. Her Mask, this does not spawn beyond tier 6. Hope, this one's reasonably common from memory. This is... The drop weight 1681. Lingering Remnants is a drop weight of about the same, yet 1921. Lucky Deck is tier 7 only. The Avenger is like staggeringly rare. What's the 167? Dragon's Heart is even rarer again. Encroaching Darkness is quite rare as well. 776. We have the Gambler, that's everywhere. So that's something that is a little bit of a pest. It is the Standoff that is the common card. So the Standoff is drop weight 5,892, but the map boss has Divine Beauty, and we have Tinkerer's Table in the Trial. The Trial doesn't spawn in tier 16, and the Tinkerer's Table is genuinely rare. So the idea here is that because we can get Divine Beauty, Divine Beauty's drop weight is 460. This means that all things that are known about this map considered, you're something like 1 in 8 to get a set of Divine Beauty and it will not drop from the boss, it'll drop from a trash monster in the boss. So that's when you get a Kirak mission that says go into Lava Chamber and find a set of divination cards. So this is going to be completely broken if it works. GGG have definitely been made aware of it because I made a video about this strategy in 321. But boss map drops have been available for Kirak div missions in the past. They may have stealth changed that, and if they haven't, they probably should. Yeah. I figured, Paoni, that it's something that, like, I don't really care because I'm watching on a monitor, but people who are watching on a phone, or worse, people who are watching on a tablet, especially if you're watching on a tablet with headphones in bed or something, that's just not going to be pleasant. Just suddenly, it's flashbang, fire in the hole, and boom.
Anyways, folks, thank you all. It has been a fun pre-league hype period. It doesn't actually feel like league start is tomorrow. I think that will jump out at me soon, but it sort of... I think actually it will jump out at me on Thursday when I take a day completely off POE and don't think about the game for a day. But yeah, I think that the unique map change was actually more urgent, but the lava chamber thing, I'm going to make a video about it. Say this is broken. Say that I hope that this gets nerfed. If it doesn't go live though, if it doesn't get nerfed, then you need to do this strategy. So, alrighty, folks. Thank you all. May your Valorbs have interesting results, and may you have the league start.